couple of interesting things about Robertson, though, because when you get that back that far, it's right around the Civil War. So the number one thing genealogists like to do when you're researching someone is if they're alive during a significant event, you want to see what they were doing. So I tried to find out what was Robertson doing, because if he was born in the 1820s, he would have been in his 40s by the Civil War, late 30s when it started.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out he died pretty much right after that census. He died in 1850.
Oh, really? So he was never.
So
in the war.
So your third great grandfather grew up without a father because his father died when he was just a baby.
That was Kirby, right?
That was Kirby. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because it gives you a look into that family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So the Civil War, when it was going on, and if you remember, it was Kirby, and then he had an older sister, so he didn't really have older brothers. So they're living in North Carolina during the Civil War. He's like 12 years old. His sister's like 13, or what, and they don't have a father to protect them.
Yeah, where were they living?
Well, they're living in North Carolina. So
at the same time,
there's a lot of shit going down.
You take
there.
a look at a 13-year-old kid back in the day was considered a man.
Oh, he was he wasn't old enough to be in the war, but he was probably he was the one who had to protect the house.
Yeah, he was protector for sure.
I mean, he was the thing, if you think about it, and you can, if you've watched any movies like Cold Mountain, or movies aren't exactly always the best example.
Men were expected to be strong.
Yeah. But there were a lot of not just Union soldiers who were going through and pillaging stuff from people, but Confederate soldiers were going and taking what they wanted from houses. They would go to a farmer's house and they would take their livestock.
Yeah,
they would go and rape the women.
They were drinking schnapps.
So it was probably a pretty scary time for them, especially. One thing that I wanted to do, but it was like 2 a.m. by the time I was starting to think about this. I was like, I don't want to be half asleep when I'm doing this. But one of the things that I'm going to do is look into what happened in Washington County during the Civil War. And then you can get an idea of what they went through, because especially if there were any battles or troops going through.
You didn't look that up?
I wasn't able to look that up.
There's a lot of history, especially in Plymouth. That's Washington County. Yeah. So that's where they actually had the ironclads. So the ironclads went through the river, and there was a huge battle in Plymouth, and that was there's still a house, I think, in Plymouth that has a blood stain from the Civil War where someone was shooting out a window. They've just kept it there. So if you go historic Plymouth, which if you go to Plymouth now, it's shit. But it has a lot of history to it. Everything in that area has so much Civil War history. Like even Edenton. Edenton was a huge, almost like a port for the ships and stuff to come in. It was huge. They had the cannonballs. They had all this stuff set up along the river. It's really interesting. James Iredale was there. He lived there in Edenton. Yeah. You go there now, and it's a shit fest. It's like, I can't believe that all this stuff in history happened here. Because you
get a lot of places where, really big historical things happened, and then
just gets run down.
They just kind of get abandoned because people kind of want to leave it alone. It's historical. They don't want to screw with it at all. And then after a while, the people that are caring for it maybe die off or can't care for it.
And the area doesn't develop anymore. People are moving away for jobs.